There, okay, that works. That's good. Okay, what is the forecast project? So what we're doing is, it is a project we started this year / last year, observing and learning about thermal impacts of climate change on the Cascade Head Biosphere. We're focusing on 4 different parts, 4 different habitats, uplands, river estuary, intertidal, and open ocean. There's like an individual kind of project for each one, but we're also trying to see them as all one project and see how they interact. And it's all taking place in the Cascade Head Biosphere. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to involve citizen scientists in climate change research. Citizen science, in my eyes, is trying to involve the public in science that, and for us, we want it to be legitimate science that can actually be used. And so that is the difficulty we're having. But we're trying to include science, art, and traditional ecological knowledge all in one as best we can. If you have just science, it's hard for a lot of people to understand. And if you have just art, there's no science to back it up. And then the traditional ecological knowledge kind of balances it all out and helps add to it. This picture, actually, the Gyotaku, I can't pronounce it probably correctly. It's perfect. Close enough. But this is one of the Gyotaku I was able to make during the summer with Duncan. It was one of the best experiences I've had. So there were some goals that were kind of set out at the beginning of the internship of what I was going to be doing. And first one was be the glue between all the internship leaders and everyone who's part of this project, part of the forecast project. And so that was a big part of what I did. It was a lot of scheduling, gathering materials, coordinating between different people and different organizations. There was also going to be some field data collection, and I got to do a lot of that, which was very fun. And then a big part of it was protocols, especially for the uplands, which is one of our habitats. And that took several weeks, and it's still actually in the process of being finished and corrected and hopefully sent to everyone soon. So I'm going to start with the uplands and move down the list all the way down to the open ocean. So for the uplands, we are using phenocams to look at plants. Phenocam is a time-lapse camera that we have set out. It takes pictures every, for us, it's every hour. There's a picture of it right here, top in the middle. That is one of our cameras. We have 8 different cameras out right now, and they're all on different plants. Each of these plants are supposedly affected by thermal climate change in some way or another, and so we're trying to see how they are affected. The map is where those cameras are right now. We have 5 that are up near 3 Rocks Road, kind of by Duncan's house, and then we have 3 that are out at the Cascade Head Experimental Forest and Scenic Research Area. The 2 bottom pictures are examples of some of the photos we got from the plants. The one on the left is a goldenrod, and the one on the right is a huckleberry. Oh. So these are the 8 plants we have cameras on, I mentioned, and they're evergreen huckleberry, red huckleberry, goldenrod, Sitka spruce, and so on. So some of the materials and methods I wanted to show and showcase how we're doing it, how we're setting it up and doing it is, I guess these pictures. The one on the right is one of the cameras that's set up actually looking at one of the plants, that is goldenrod. We have the camera with it being programmed. Actually, that's one that hasn't been programmed yet. It still has the default name. And then the picture on the right is actually the first day on this internship, and Duncan was unavailable. He wasn't exactly able to do something that we were planning on doing, so I ended up going and setting up cameras the very first day. And that was a picture at the Cascade Head Experimental Forest research area, and it was a really amazing experience for me to do this. I'd never done anything like it before. So for uplands, the last part of it, after actually gathering photos, was processing data. What we're doing with the photos, pretty much. And to do that, I wrote the protocols. with a lot of help from Duncan and all of the other mentors. And the protocols are pretty much the instruction manual. If all of us, all the leaders just disappeared, could someone take these instructions and keep the project going? And that was very difficult because it was ended up being kind of a guide for dummies because every little detail had to be put into it. And then for actually analyzing the photos, we finally decided on a platform, and it's called Nature's Notebook. It's part of the National Phenology Network. It's a project of theirs, and it's public. You can look at any kind of plant or animal. They have a huge database of them, and it allows people to go out and do research on their own, citizen science, and bring it back and actually see the results and how it changes from year to year for different areas. We use the platform. You can see the picture on the bottom left, the big spreadsheet. That is me putting it into the data sheet. We're looking for a lot of different things, mostly the same things that they were looking for, which are things like growth in the plant, if there are leaves, flowers, such as things like that, also fruit. Depends on the plant, the pheno stages change. And then we're also looking at several things that they weren't including, which is what our comments are about. We're looking at fog and how a lot of the plants, as the fog rolls over in the morning, you'll be able to see nothing. The camera just completely blocked out, and then it changes as the day goes on, the fog burns off. And it's a count of how many hours we actually had fog in different plants. And something I thought was really interesting is on certain plants, it was almost exactly every other day. It was like fog one day, no fog, fog one day, no fog for certain plants. And that was just something I thought was really interesting. We were also looking for bees, honeybees, bumblebees, and butterflies, which are actually really hard to catch when you're only taking a picture once an hour. So it's kind of lucky when you find them. And there were several that I was seeing a lot of these, especially goldenrod, but others it's harder to find. And then the picture on the right side is some of that fog rolling over the hills at Cascade Head. So I'm moving on to the next habitat, which is river estuary. And this one is still in the works. We don't have a person to lead it yet. Actually, I don't know. There might be, that might be being figured out tomorrow at the meeting. But it is likely to be covering salmon. That is what we're probably going to be looking at. And it's probably going to be coho specifically. I'm going to move on to the intertidal habitat. So for intertidal, we're looking at sea stars. Looking at how they're being affected or / recovering from wasting in years past, and specifically at Cascade Head. We're having volunteers from the aquarium come out, and the Oregon Coast Aquarium come out and help with this. I think we have 4 or 5 people right now who are helping, and then me. And August. The way we're setting it up is we have 5 transects. Each of them are 5 meters long. We lay out a tape. It's 5 meters, and then we measure a meter on each side, 2 meters wide, and we look for sea stars in that transect, in that space. And we're trying to count every single one and the species, the size of the sea star, and then if it's healthy, that kind of thing. The picture on the top is our materials. I ended up having to searching on Amazon for all of those, which was a long process. So something I wanted to highlight is that there are varying difference in size of a lot of these sea stars. And as you can see, there are some that are very, very small. I can't believe Corey actually found this one. It's the smallest I've ever seen. So the 3 common species that we found the most of are ochre sea stars, which is Aster ocraceus, Leptosterius, which is blood star, Henricea, which is the common name we have is six-arm sea star, and those were the hardest for me to find actually, six-arm sea star, because they like to hide up under the ledges, like right below the mussel beds, and so they'll go up under the edges, and they're pretty small. They're only like maybe a couple inches at the largest, and so They go in the cracks and crevices, especially where the urchins have dug out holes in the rock, and it's very difficult to find. For me, I noticed the biggest thing was just looking for them practicing, kind of, because I had two practice transects pretty much that we did 2 days where you got up at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning, went out with PC steps, which is hard to do. And the first day I found maybe like 3 or 4, and that was just because I didn't know what I was looking for. And then the second time I started to understand where they were and how to look for them, and I found more like 10, which was a big difference. And it was the same area. We were looking at the same transects both days. So I'm going to move on to the open ocean, which is the 4th habitat we have. And what we're doing is we're looking at the rack line. We're looking at, well, because we don't have the funding right now to go out actually into the ocean on a boat or something like that, we're letting the open ocean come to us as best we can in the form of the rack line. And that rack line is that high tide mark where all the debris gets left behind when the tide goes back out, when the waves come in. This is actually a pretty good picture of it. And we're having people go walk that rack line and pretty much report back on what they find on specific species. We have 4 species of animals or insects we're looking at, and then 4 kelp species. Like I said, we're having you walk the rack line. We're using a app that people might know called iNaturalist. It's very useful for actually just like learning about different animals, taking pictures, figuring out what a species is. But we're using it in a different way. Where I created a project that allows us to get a list of all the pretty much what people report in on the things they find. So dang it, still it won't work. So these are the 8 species we're looking for: bull kelp, feather boa kelp, giant kelp, sea palms, by-the-wind sailors, which happen to be missing for some reason, carpenter ants, which I was really surprised about because it seemed like something you normally see, and then California market squid eggs and sea pickles, or in my eyes, pyrosomes. So I'm gonna kind of go back over that first part, the goals. I feel like I managed to do a pretty good job of this, actually doing all of these things and learning from them. That be the glue at the beginning, that was meeting and getting to know and connecting all the leaders of this project, forecast project. And I feel like I got to know everyone very well, and I spent a lot of time with them, which was amazing. The scheduling, materials coordinating, and organizing, that was a big part of it too. I can't count how many Zoom meetings I ended up setting up and having. And trying to organize every single one of them, figuring out what we're gonna do. Duncan had me push me on what I've done before and really figure out how to organize it on my own a little bit, and that was a new thing for me. And then the last thing was the protocols, which spent several weeks working on, and it's still being finished, like I mentioned. And I'm actually probably gonna go back after this and finish it. So in conclusion, it's 4 different projects in 4 different habitats, all in the one big biosphere reserve. And each project is unique in its own ways, but they're also pretty similar. And so we're trying to have them all connect to each other and see how they interact versus just by themselves. And I also want to say thank you so much, Duncan, for being my mentor, Cynthia, Ichang, everyone, all the other interns. It was amazing to get to know you. And I'm really glad I was able to do this internship. It pushed me beyond what I've done before, and I'm excited to keep working on it. Some acknowledgements, actually, another acknowledgement. Most of the photos from this were from Duncan, and they were amazing. So thank you again for that. And then these are the different organizations I ended up working with. So thank you to all of them. And then questions. That is the weirdest face I ever made. Anyone?
So that tiny sea star,
Yes.
is that an adult or is that like a juvenile? That's why.
It's a juvenile, and I think we decided it was an ochre sea star based on what we were thinking.
Yeah, I think it was juvenile occur, and when she
Juvenile.
measured it, I think its arm length is 3 millimeters.
Yeah, it's so small.
This is more of an observation, but as is appropriate for habitats that depend on water, we threw Jeremy into the deep end really early on, and Jeremy, I really admire how you learned. It sounds like this is a thread running through most of your experiences as mentors, but Jeremy was doing yoga the entire time. He was really stretched all the time, and he met so many of the needs of the project. And one of the things we're hoping all you mentors will continue in this within these same venues. But we hope that Jeremy, you can come back and be involved in the project, because it's a long-term project and you're not seeing the payoff of how we're seeing the interrelationship of thermal effects of climate change. So you're young. We hope you'll stay involved with the project.
I'm actually, there is actually anyone who wants to is in the area. There's a big beach art thing going on Monday.
Monday and Tuesday in front
Monday
of
and Tuesday,
this casino in Lincoln City. We're doing art on the beach. So one of our missions is bringing art and science together. So 8:30 in the morning, come see giant beach art.
Yep. So I'm going to continue to work on help with that and everything, and hopefully continue to in the future.
2 questions.
Okay.
One, can you talk a little bit about, coming into this as a marine studies intern with a marine focus, yet you were involved in other ecosystems.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about your, did you have any epiphanies or realizations looking at not only having that focus on the marine and being a marine studies major, but also thinking about upriver?
That was actually really surprising to me. I had a lot of fun doing the cameras in uplands. I was surprised by that. And I realized that what I did for this, where it's a mixture of all of it, is something I actually really enjoy. I didn't realize I was so focused on ocean that I never went the other direction, inland. And there's a lot of interesting things that are going on, especially with the phenology things, the National Phenology Network that I talked about. We're using one of their programs, Nature's Notebook. I spent hours and hours just browsing all through the things that they're doing in the projects and what they've gathered about different things that are going on and it's all mostly inland. And I was like, wait a second, isn't this internship a marine studies? It's ocean. Well, this is something that's really interesting and it's part of the internship. So I spent a lot of time there.
And then my second question is, can you elaborate more on this art project that's happening on Monday and Tuesday?
So I can do some. So they're 8 in the morning, as Duncan said, they're having an artist come out and do a big wonder. It's the word wonder. That's what the idea of it is wonder about everything, both wonder like wondering, but also the wonder of the ocean and the wonder of everything else that's out there. And they're drawing a big word wonder. I think it's 100 yards long.
100 yards long. Yeah, it's a calligraphy.
Huge, on the beach, and having people come out and we can talk to them about Cascade Head and the ocean and everything else that's out there. That's the idea.
And the second day,
I don't actually know as much about the second day.
phyto and zooplankton, and how they relate to the web of life in the marine environment. Yeah, and they'll be 60, 80 feet long. Little things made big.
Made out of what?
They're graphics on the sand,
Okay.
so that people can see them from a distance. We'll be droning, but people will be able to actually walk into phytoplankton, zooplankton, see how they're shaped, hear from scientists and artists about them. So, yeah.
And then erased by the tide.
Exactly. Yes. Transient.
educational.